Let's go, Prof.
Oh, I'm waiting for you. Is it?
At Focus on Liberia, we discuss everything Liberia, from education to politics, arts and culture, entertainment, agriculture, history, religion, family, and technology. Focus on Liberia.
You're live, Prof.
This is another about this evening time is when we come to you from the desk of the Literary Hour with Jackie Saye and K. Moses Nagbe. Uh, for this session, Miss Jackie Saye is celebrating her natal day, and guess what? She is far away from her home in New York. She is in the Caribbean world. She is in a magical little place called Bermuda. That's where her daughter took her to celebrate her natal day. The natal day was April 6th. So we wish her all the best. In any case, the show must go on. And this evening show is about remembrance. Once in a while, people have got to steal a few ideas from one source to the other, except that they must be honest enough to uh, mention the source. I'm sure those of you who are pursuing the Christian tradition will kind of remember the phrase in Christendom. People are told that they should remember Christ uh, both for what he did and hopefully for what he will do when he returns. So we have what is called do this in remembrance of me. Christ admonishing his followers to keep remembering certain things, keep remembering certain statements, keep doing certain acts, some of which he did when he was here on earth some 2,000 plus years ago. So we decided to hang our hats, our coats, and everything on the phrase, do that in remembrance. Now, what is it that we often need to remember. There are so many things that we are likely to remember. As long as we have heads on our shoulders, and in the heads are brains, from a very young learning age, we know that the brains happen to be the workhorse that captures most things. In fact, captures everything that we can become aware of, and at multiple times and in multiple places, our brains replay those things that have been captured. If our brains do not display those things while we are awake, our brains display them while we are asleep. So, both in our conscious and subconscious stations of life, we are likely to remember. Is it something we remember in our various relationships? Talking about our family members, talking about our loved ones, talking about mere friends. Is it something we remember as far as possessions are concerned? Those of us who like things a whole lot, the vehicles, the homes, if we have pets, the pets. Is it something about moments? Our birthdays, important anniversaries, including wedding anniversaries or uh, love anniversaries or parties. Some of us think about reunions and all those. We talk about births, or we talk about deaths, or talk about when friends came and when friends left. Sometimes it's all about religious seasons and rituals. Uh, in these past few weeks, Muslims are celebrating their own religious seasons. Ramadan, for instance. Christians are talking about uh, the entry of Christ into Jerusalem, which was all about Palm Sunday. And now, this very day, Friday, they're talking about Good Friday, good because of someone who came to redeem the world reportedly. And by Sunday, having sadly been put to death, according to the plan of his mission, he will rise on Sunday according to believers. So the question is, what do you often remember? And that was the brief list, the short list of areas in which people remember. If you are just joining us at this literary hour, we are talking about do that in remembrance. What is it that you need to remember? Or what is it that you always remember? That you probably want to reflect on as we go through this hour. My co-host, who is often the chief host, Ms. Jackie Sire, is vacationing in Bermuda. Bermuda is in the Caribbean world. It's a little magical place. Ms. Sire had her birthday on April 6th, and her daughters took her out there to have a well-deserved rest. So we come back to our overarching topic, do that in remembrance. What is that we should do as a way of remembering? What is that we should do to remember? The move on to the other phase of the discussion, which has to do with if you do something, the next point is, why do you do it? Why do you do it? It is another thing for someone to say, well, you don't have to press me to tell you why I did it. I did it because I did it. No. One of the things that kind of increase an excitement for a specific thing is being able to explain why you've done a specific thing. Why do we remember? In most instances, we do things as a way of expressing enjoyment, as a way of expressing enjoyment. I say in most instances because sometimes there is a returning type of feeling. There is a returning type of feeling. If you remember, remembrance has to do with an interfacing with all or some of the senses that all humanity has. We talk about the sense of hearing. We talk about the sense of seeing. We talk about the sense of smelling. We talk about the sense of touching or feeling. Sometimes we are walking or working, and suddenly we think we hear a voice. Or sometimes we smell something. Or sometimes we taste something. In either scenario, there is something possibly that the taste of that thing, the smell of that thing, the sight of that thing, the sound of that thing reminds us of. How many times have we not seen someone that reminds us of some relative or some friend or some teacher or some student? Sometimes the food. All of a sudden, we remember those of us who are very much fond of our grandparents that may have passed, our parents that may have passed, our friends that may have passed, or may be in some parts of the world. So, whatever the case is, we remember as a way of celebrating. We remember as a way of celebrating. Once in a while, though, we remember certain things not in a fun way, not in a fun way. And sometimes that remembrance may spoil our day. If we loved a friend or loved a parent so much, or loved some community person so much, and that person has left the world, it hurts a little more. But even in that painful remembrance, there is joy. That is the very interesting thing about life. That is joy. It may be in a dream that we saw that person, and the dream was so clearly laid out, so intense. We went in the bathroom, we returned, still the dream will not leave us. And eventually, when that dream dissipates, in the sadness, we find joy. Sometimes we hadn't seen this person for a very long time, and all of a sudden, that person appears in the dream when we didn't expect. That's how sometimes the brain works. Uh, it has a number of screen saving techniques that we may not have control over. Whatever the case, we remember because of past or present intensity of that particular thing. If you are joining us, this is the Literary Hour, and we are looking at the theme, Do That in Remembrance. We looked first at what is that we remember. And now we are looking at why do we remember? In just a simple way, it may be because of past or present intensity of the impact that thing had on us. So as you are listening, I hope when the moment comes for the interaction with our audience, you will be able to uh, share with us what you often remember and why you often remember that. Now, there comes the third phase of our discussion, which has to do with the value and the impact of things we remember and why we remember. We all live in this world, whether we like it or not, that we cherish relevance. Relevance is all about recognition and paying due respect. If you go to some place and there's someone who simply looks at you, and as we say in Liberia, that person cuts an eye on you, it's like that person doesn't even notice or pretends to not notice your presence. It gets to you. If you are a wild mouth person, an aggressive or assertive person, you will say, well, why are you looking at me like that? Why that person look at me like that? Who does that person think he is or she is? Whatever the case is, remembrance sustains our sense of relevance, that we count, that we are someone or something too. Remembrance also sustains our sense of sanity. There is a big disease. People say that that disease is prevalent in the far stage of adulthood. They talk about 60, 65 or higher, where you lose all the senses. More specifically, you lose your sense of remembering or the sense of sanity. So if you continue to remember, then of course it has to do with sustaining your sense of sanity. Of course, those of us who drink or whoever drank. I'm talking about really drinking and forgetting about yourself. You may not remember certain things at certain time until someone tells you, and you simply go beating up yourself. Why did I do this or something of that sort? Another value and impact of remembrance is that remembrance keeps us grounded in multiple cycles of life. One old man once said that an individual is born with one name, but no sooner had that person begun to interact with people or serve society, that person will have so many names. So when it comes to being grounded in multiple cycles of life, at one point you are a father or mother. At another point, you are an aunt or uncle. You are a cousin. You are a friend. You are a community leader. You are so many things, either at the same time or one stage of life followed by the other. In short, remembrance keeps us grounded in multiple cycles of life. There is a past thinker, a French thinker called Maurice Holbach. Maurice Holbach uh, proposed a theory called collective memory, where he talks about a multiplicity of narratives owned by group or groups of people. Such narratives become the anchor of our sense of identity and our sense of belonging. Our sense of identity and our sense of belonging. If you are a librarian, you are likely to respond to stories related to April 14, 1979, especially if you were born in that time of the nation. Most or all of us can respond to April 1980 of the military coup. Most of all can respond to the nearly 20 years of civil war in the country. That's part of the collective memory that we all, whether we like it or not, can share in. In South Africa, people have been able to respond to apartheid, which ran for so many years and eventually brought someone like Walter Sisulu, Tom Mbeki, and good old Nelson Mandela. In America, we can talk about multiple chapters, including Jim Crow era in this nation, the United States of America. We can talk about the civil rights movement. We can talk about the death of Martin Luther King Jr., especially this year, April 3rd. We can even talk about um, 9/11, where jet planes were weaponized to ram into uh, one of the many, two of the many iconic buildings, the Twin Tower in uh, in New York. So we are talking about remembrance being able to help us strengthen the sense of collective memory, establishing the sense of identity and belonging. And from all these stories, from all these narratives, we see a promotion of dialogue and the promotion of conversations. Every time there's got to be something that catches the attention of a few people or a lot of people. That is what we thought to evoke this this evening by talking about do that in remembrance. By talking about do that in remembrance. We've reached a point in our discussion where we'll pause and see whether there are comments or questions that hopefully should come from our audience if there are such people or comments.
No comments.
Oh my God.
You are muted, Prof. Unmute yourself.
muting and unmuting itself. Huh? This thing is doing it regularly now. This muting us.
No, it's good. You are good now.
Yeah, every now and then, by the time you know what's happening, then it comes up. So did you know that if you name your child after your mother or your father, it is that act of remembrance you are pursuing? Did you know that if you named your pet using a specific phrase, then it is that act of remembrance? I had an aunt who was in the business of naming a utensil after someone who might have given her some money. For instance, I know when I left home from Greenville, Sino County, and traveled to Monrovia, and then from there to the United States for my master's, and I went back there and then returned to visit the home. I left her some money, and she bought a pair of pots and a pair of bowls, very pretty bowls, uh, chinaware, and she named them after me. So one or two times when I went home, she cooked very delicious bitter leaf and fufu. That was one of her specialties. And I sat somewhere, and then she asked one or two of her grandchildren to bring the Tembro Nagbe bowls. That's my indigenous name. And she said, bring Tembro Nagbe bowls on the table there for K. Moses to eat. And that was something that provoked laughter. We are talking about remembrance now. To this day, I still remember that. Some people even name certain books or certain furniture items after their children or after their nieces or nephews. In other words, human creativity is boundless. Sometimes I wonder what would have become of religion if people did not create all these rituals, religious rituals. The Muslims pray 5 times a day. They talk about dispersing alms, 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 and many other things. Today, which is Friday, from 12 to 3 or 4, in fact, some said it at 3, they read the holy words of the cross. That's part of the rituals. And remember now, some 2,000 years plus ago, the first people celebrated that. At least that was the actual thing. And over the years, Christians have not ceased to do that. They have continued to this very day. They often do that in remembrance of Jesus Christ. Do that. They often did that, or they've often done that in remembrance. Because the moment you stop doing these things, the moment you start engaging in these rituals, forgetfulness sets in, complacency sets in, and the actual thing that people are supposed to hold on to as a way of establishing their sanity, as a way of establishing their identity and sense of belonging, will fall out. Can you remember, or can you just think for once about a time that people would not be singing religious songs and mouthing religious verses? And people talk about the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pasture. He restored my soul. He leadeth me in the path of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valleys of the shadow of death, I'll fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the. And then we talk about our Father, the Lord's Prayer. You talk about the Apostles' Creed. All these things, in moments of distress, in moments of hopelessness, we remember those things and talk about them. Sometimes you may have had a very intense love relationship, and maybe that person has died, or maybe that person has gone somewhere else. Was it a song that you all often listen to, a piece of music that you all listen to or dance to? When that piece of music is playing, it almost immediately stirs up the feelings, stirs up the thoughts about that. That is what we are talking about here in terms of doing that in remembrance. In remembrance of whom? In remembrance of what? Sometimes it's a plate of food or a bowl of food. You remember Miss Sire, Jackie Sire, who remember her grandmother and remember a pot of palm butter with tabadoo, a possum, dried and seasoned very well. As we move on to this end of our time with each other, what is it that you remember? What is it that you are remembering? Why are you remembering that? Sometimes you might remember a naughty professor, maybe a hard-nosed professor who students are often glad to leave, like some of us, And then the interesting thing is that the professor that they quarrel about and all that, when they are enjoying all the good things coming out of remembering what that professor taught, when they are getting all the money and what have you, they don't think about the professor anymore. They're thinking about how well they learned something and they are benefiting from it. That's what they think about. So one of the things we need to think about as we round up to is that it is important for you to acknowledge what certain people have meant in your life, what certain people have done in your life. At some point, you might think you are on top of the world and you think that you pull yourself up by your bootstraps. But it shouldn't hurt for you to remember the one or two good things someone may have done in your life. To remember what others have done in your life is to increase your own blessing. Is it a woman who did one or two good things in your life? Is it a man who did one or two good things in your life? Is it a friend or a set of friends that did a few good things in your life? It is just social respectability for you to extend some gesture of thanks or recognition to such people. Do that in remembrance. Finally, keep in mind that remembrance is much of a cyclical celebration. Remembrance is a sort of cyclical celebration. In other words, it comes up over and over and over again until we are dead. Our brains continue to work. And as I said, sometimes there are certain sounds, sometimes there are certain tastes, sometimes there are certain feelings that remind us of things past. Remembrance is human affirmation of life itself. Remembrance is human affirmation of life itself. And it is an opportunity for us to treasure every aspect of it. It is an opportunity to treasure every aspect of it. Remembrance, as long as we live, the act of remembrance remains an important aspect of life itself. If you cannot remember, especially if you cannot remember a whole swath of things, then you must begin to uh, then you must begin to feel uneasy, then it means that something is appearing that you must be able to work on. Is this something about Alzheimer's? That big disease of forgetfulness? Then you've got to really do something about it. Then you have to really do something about it. Again, this is the literary hour. A platform of the diaspora television program known as Focus on Liberia, with the CEO as Dennis Jar. Through this program, we continue to reflect on multiple aspects of life in Liberia. Again, for our final word, remembrance is what one might call cyclical celebration of life. It is the human affirmation of life itself. Our program, our platform, which has to do with the literary hour, is simply calling attention to being able to recognize the human activity of remembrance and enjoy it the best way possible. And just as a way of going out, I recently did a book titled Beyond Buffoonery, exploring ways to get Liberia well rooted in all things diligent and dignifying. This can be found on Amazon, and if your little pocket or your big pocket takes you around Amazon, you might want to look at a copy as a way of remembering some of the things that were said today. Beyond buffoonery, exploring things that will keep Liberia well rooted in all things decent and dignifying. I have been your host, K. Moses Nagbe, often a co-host to Miss Jackie Sayer, who currently is in Bermuda, enjoying quiet time as a way of celebrating her birthday. Thank you all for watching. Mr. Dennis Jar was at controls. K. Moses Nagbe has been commenting on the theme, Do That in Remembrance. I hope you had a wonderful watching. Next week, God willing, we will take up another theme. And as you leave for the rest of the evening, please continue to be thoughtful, continue to be reflective, and make good meaning out of your life. Thanks for watching. K. Moses Nagbe now signing off.
We are Labira. Labira is our home. Labira people. Labira.